there has got to be an honesty from everybody involved. So all this talk of shark tanking, it's a complete lie.
At some point, you do have to maybe look in the mirror a little bit and think, okay, is there an element of accountability that I need to take? Listen, if you are constantly at the fucking scene of the crime, at some point you're the criminal, right? At some point the blood's on your hands. And I'm just tired of the bullshit. And I'm tired of some people's egos just getting insanely out of control. Talking about unsuccessfully, we do have some bad news. Hello and welcome back to Misfits News. I'm your host, Ben the Bane Davis, as always, joined by my co-host, Biel. And finally, we have some actual breaking news to discuss with you guys. But before we get to all of the latest and greatest updates on the world of crossover combat, I got to take it to my co-host, Biel. Biel, how are you?
I'm doing fantastically, Ben. Did you really just say that? Did I just hear breaking news on Misfits News? Wow, that's a revolution.
It's only taken us a year. It's only taken us a full calendar year to actually break something instead of recapping, which I'm excited about.
Well, let me give you today's topics. That being the new Misfits lightweight champion has been crowned. We have some exclusive fight announcements, and we hear from KSI's team, Coach Alexis.
Cannot wait for it all. Now, we do have to kick things off with some controversy that's been playing out in the last couple of weeks or so. Our previous undisputed lightweight champion, Deenthegreat, following that interim lightweight tournament conclusion, has been stripped of the title, and little CraCra has been upgraded to undisputed status. Biel, what a really crazy turn of events, I'd say, for that 135-pound division.
I think you put that perfectly there. It was a ton of events. It was something I didn't expect. Now, when I went onto Twitter and it popped up, I had to refresh and I thought, is this a fan-made thing? Is this real? And when I saw it was real, I was disappointed to see that because I was excited to see it. And I think it was actually scheduled to happen in January for them to face off. And it looks like after having built this tournament, having built up this rivalry, I guess, somewhat of a rivalry, it looks like we're not going to get that fight. And I just want to give the statement from Misfits before we get into our opinions of it as well. It's saying that regrettably, Dean has rejected the fight with Lil CraCra and will now be stripped of the title as Misfits Boxing Lightweight World Champion, fulfilling the remaining fights on his contract as a non-champion. Now, I think I want to highlight there, Ben, he's going to be fulfilling his contract, but as a non-champion.
Which, I mean, we'll see. You know, there might be a world in which Dean challenges for the title that he never lost inside the ring down the line. But the real question on many fans' minds is, why did this occur? Why was he stripped? And I think the big reason that Dean has stated publicly is money. It came down to contracts. And Dean feeling undervalued, Dean feeling that he's not getting paid enough. But I have some split thoughts on that, truthfully, candidly. You know, Dean, all well and good. Go for what you're worth, especially if you are getting paid a certain amount to then maybe fight your following matchup for a significantly lower amount. I get why you'd be frustrated, but you know, there's a lot of guys that make so little, and especially like, let's say in the UFC. Guys that are on $45,000 contracts show win. You know what I mean? So if there's a world in which I look at the amounts that I'm hearing getting thrown around, and I'm thinking, come on, man. Come on. Be a team player a little bit.
It's a shame to see as well, because I like the character of Deenthegreat. I think he's got a fantastic persona. He has an amazing right hand, which he's proven so many times in the ring. And, you know, he comes from Misfits 1. He's one of the champions from then. And, you know, even Slim comes from Misfits 1. So when we see some of these fighters that are moving on, and candidly so, if they want to do it, all respect to that as well. If they want to move on, if they feel like they've done what they need to do at Misfits and they want to try something else, there's nothing that we can do to stop them from doing that, apart from contracts. But that's nothing to do with neither yourself or myself. So it's disappointing to see. I would have been excited to see that fight. However, Ben, I'm going to turn it and hopefully turn it to a slightly more positive note. I saw a back and forth between Joey Knight and Deenthegreat. Joey Knight actually saying he was offered to fight Dean in Qatar, but Dean said no. I actually really like that fight. I think that's a really fun fight, and it may be a good way for Dean to come back to Misfits and make a bit of a statement and say, I am worth that money. If I knock out Joey Knight, I'm really worth what I'm asking for.
I think that's fair. I think from Dean's perspective, though, he doesn't need to make that statement. Dean's probably thinking to himself, I made that statement against Dave Fogarty in Dublin. You know, that's probably where his head's at. And for Misfits, I mean, if they are really undervaluing him, as Dean says, then why would Misfits create that opportunity for him, right? It kind of sounds like Misfits has moved on and the ship has maybe seemingly sailed. So I'm just not sure. I just will state this, when you are constantly the common denominator of these controversies and these big blowups and whatnot, at some point you do have to maybe look in the mirror a little bit and think, okay, is there an element of accountability that I need to take? Am I at fault? Am I maybe in the wrong a little bit? And that's those are just questions that some people need to ask and answer internally, because listen, if you are constantly at the fucking scene of the crime, at some point you're the criminal, right? At some point the blood's on your hands. And I'm just tired of the bullshit, and I'm tired of some people's egos just getting insanely out of control. So this scene needs a little bit of a reality check. And like Riley Roundhouse Osborne mentioned in the previous episode, you want to go test out Oasis? You want to go try and find the better world out there? Good luck to you. I wish you the best in that endeavor, but I don't believe that that's going to occur for you.
Well, let's talk about our new champion, Lil CraCra. He has now been crowned, and I think deservedly so after having a great performance in the tournament. Now, I say that it was an odd tournament because they fought twice, he was knocked out once and came back in the final. But if anything, that shows he can come back from adversity and that he does have that championship mentality where if I lose, I can come back from this. And he has gone against the highest level of opponent in the tournament as well. So what is next for Lil CraCra? That's the question on my mind right now, Ben.
That's a really good question. I think that there's a couple people in the lightweight division that would be interested in Lil CraCra next. I don't think we'll get the quadrilogy between Yuddy Gang and Lil CraCra. I think that's going to have to take some time before it can manifest. But I think let's wait and see. Let's bring in someone interesting to give a challenge to Lil CraCra for January 18th. My knowledge is he's still remaining on that card. So I think we give someone a shot that's currently not in Misfits, currently not in the scene, and let the lightweight division figure itself out. Guys like Joey Knight, guys like Argentinian King, guys like Yuddy coming off of losses. They need to reestablish themselves. So let's get Lil CraCra some debutante with some steam behind him, some name that Lil CraCra can go up against, right? Create drama there, and let the other contenders in the division fight so that a new top dog can emerge.
Ben, let's move on to the exciting topic of the episode, our exclusives. Woo! And that being, let me start it off with Carla Jade making her return. And this time, she is stepping up an opponent in competition and will be fighting a BKFC champion in Manchester on January 18th.
Listen, that's ridiculous that Carla Jade's taking on a BKFC champ in her third boxing match, I believe. She had the debut way back in 2023, then beat Nikki Rue for the female lightweight title, and now is taking on a champ defending the throne in Manchester on the 18th. I'm pumped about that. I'm excited to see Carla Jade back. I'm glad that this undercard has some hardware on the line. We're seeing some championship matchups, so I'm excited about that. But I'll tell you what, I'm also excited about the return of Slingin' Sammy from Miami, Sammy Hamid, the son of Prince Nassim Hamid. Boxing royalty is in the blood. What a fantastic debut he had in Dublin, getting that just beautiful TKO. Looked slick, looked absolutely clean, and he will return on January 18th.
That's two great fights there, Ben. So let's talk about that first one with Carla Jade. Last time out, as you said, she won the belt. I was really impressed with her performance, but now stepping into there with a BKFC champion, right now I do not have the knowledge of who that is. This is going to be a big step up, and if the BKFC champ can steal that belt, then the level is really raising now in the women's division.
It is, and we've seen some BKFC fighters come on over. Crystal Pittman challenged Julie Polka and was unsuccessful. So I'm glad there is this cross-collaboration that we've been able to create, right? This ecosystem where other organizations and their fighters and talent want to come swim in our waters, however unsuccessfully. But talking about unsuccessfully, we do have some bad news. We've gotten confirmation that HS Tiki Taki and Wade Clem has been postponed, which is very disappointing. Bill, what a fight that it was. And I know that it captured the interest of the entire crossover world, but it will be rebooked. It's delayed at the moment, but it will be rebooked.
It's not the exclusive I wanted to hear. It's not the one. Out of all the ones that I could have heard, when I heard that fight is no longer happening now, it was disappointing to hear. I know that HS is currently dealing with some other issues. However, we have been promised this fight will be made down the line. That not to worry, we will see Wade make that fight onto Misfits, and we will see HS face off with him later on. And I think it's going to be a super exciting fight. And I'll tell you something, Ben, from the footage that we've seen, and we heard from BJ Flores as well a couple episodes ago, he is looking good. He's really putting the work in. You can tell he's not taking any time off, and he's making sure when he steps into that ring of Misfits for the first time that he's proving it's not all talk, it's real boxing too behind that too.
Oh, completely. Wade's doing all the right things, and enlisting a coach of the caliber of BJ Flores, I think, speaks to that work ethic and is a testament to the skills that Wade's going to bring into Misfits. And from HS's perspective, there's a lot of questions that this young man needs to ask, and answer. Right, we haven't seen training footage. We haven't seen him hitting the pads. We haven't seen the sparring rounds. And his debut was against a literal trash can. No disrespect to George Fensom, but yeah, we
George,
just don't know.
beautiful.
Gorgeous, gorgeous trash can. But we just haven't seen much from HS Tiki Taki. And so knowing that there is a lot going on in his life and there's a lot of distractions and a lot of things that he needs to, figure out, it kind of makes me question his commitment to boxing. It makes me question his ability to improve and really dedicate to the craft, right? You can't become more skilled at fighting if you are constantly trying to put these fires out in other areas of your lives. Meanwhile, Wade Plem is inside the laboratory. He's inside the chamber, sharpening the tools. So I'm expecting an amazing Wade Plem, and I do hope that we see that fight soon in 2025.
I asked you, Ben, we speak about HS not doing the training and he has a lot of distractions, but do you think this would possibly be a smokescreen to him actually training, him actually doing all the work right now? And then later on, we do see a much better version of HS Tiki Taki.
With full respect to HS Tiki Taki, I don't think he possesses the ability to throw charades and misdirect and misguide people. I think what you see is what you get with HS. And, for better or worse, I don't think he has that level of depth to play those types of games. So I take the surface level HS, and I think that's it, and that's where we're at with it. All right, before we move on to our next topic, we recently just dropped the Capsule collection for the new Misfits clothing range. So make sure to check it out in the description or scan the QR code on your screen to get access to our newest clothing range. I mean, man, we have got some fire merchandise up there, Biel. Last week, we also heard from Fred Beck after he spoke with Nikisa regarding the KSI fight, which Nikisa said they'd be willing to make the fight for $100 million to Jake Paul, as it's equal to the other opportunities they have.
Now, having said that, if KSI showed up and said, here is a guaranteed $100 million for Jake Paul, then sure, like that's equal to other opportunities that we have, then we consider that. But let's be clear, we're the A side here.
They've also suggested that it's a cruiserweight fight. Jake could maybe come in around 200 pounds. All of this interesting updates and developments, which again tells me that this fight's an impossibility.
There's very interesting points. One that I also want to take that from the Nikisa interview as well. He said that when it's a cruiserweight fight, you can turn up from 176 pounds to 200 pounds. And that if he was to fight Canelo as well, if Jake was to fight Canelo wouldn't ask Jake Paul to cut down. So I want to break that down a little bit. KSI is not Canelo. let's just take it from the beginning. KSI is not Canelo. KSI is not going to let Jake Paul have any advantages in that sense. And I'm sure Jake Paul doesn't want KSI to have any advantages because this is more of a 50-50 fight than the Canelo-Jake fight. We are all very aware if Canelo and Jake were to fight tomorrow, it finishes within round 1 or 2 because Jake Paul knocks him out. No, I'm joking. Canelo absolutely demolishes him because there is such a huge skill gap. Now, when it comes to KSI and Jake, we need to make it as even as possible because we don't want the fight to happen and everyone then to make an excuse. Oh, well, Jake was heavier. Oh, KSI was heavier. Oh, he weight drained him. We don't want none of this. We want there to be no discussion. And now I want to talk about the point, Ben. I'm going to throw it to you. 100 million.
Right. So 2 things. First off, 100 million, stupid as fuck. But secondly, to get back to your previous point, I'm quite confident that I saw something that Jake said publicly where he would fight Nate Diaz at 185 inside the PFL. Am I wrong in seeing that? Was that something I
did see that as well? I did.
Right. So it's 185 for that fight, but for the KSI fight, it is this bullshit weight range that he wants to play. 185 pounds or not 185 pounds. Stop with the games. Stop with the bullshit. So to answer your question, $100 million, that's games. That's bullshit. And I understand Nikisa's point in the sense of, listen, we, after the Mike Tyson fight on Netflix, 120 million people watching, sold out stadium, 77,000, 79,000. Fantastic for them. There's a lot of other opportunities they have on the table, right? I get that. But it's a lot of dumb bullshit that I think Mams Taylor has weighed in on quite effectively since it's come out.
Well, I actually spoke with Leon as well, went off camera and on camera about the situation between KSI and Jake Paul. And I think he's one of the people that has the most valid opinions when it comes to that as well, especially with his extensive knowledge with KSI and even dealing with Jake Paul. And he said the reason why this is happening is because potentially, and most likely, one camp more than another is nervous to take this fight because it is the riskiest fight for number one for Jake Paul to take. Because if he does lose this fight, it really affects his boxing career. If he loses against KSI, it affects his chances of fighting Canelo. It affects his chances of getting a belt because losing against KSI, someone who considered himself a crossover boxer, a prize fighter, it's not going to look good. Whereas if KSI loses, he can fall back to many of things, that being the music, which he's just released another great track. He can fall back to the Sidemen. He can fall back to the Netflix shows that he's got going on as well. There's so many things that he can go back to. Whereas Jake Paul, his sole focus right now is boxing. He stated many a times now that he wants to be the next big thing, that he is the biggest thing in boxing. So losing against KSI would hold so much weight against him.
I kind of disagree a little bit. I think that both Jake and KSI have so many vehicles and avenues and income streams that, while Jake has really prioritized the boxing, let's not pretend that he's not effectively doing things elsewhere. I know Better Media is obviously chugging along, and that's a whole Jake Paul entity. The podcast that he's got, he just launched that deodorant or body spray. What is it, Wave or Waves W? Yeah, whatever it is. He's got other things going on. So I don't want to misconstrue and state that boxing is Jake Paul's only thing, right? And when it comes down to Leon's thoughts on someone being scared to take the fight, I also kind of disagree with that. I don't think either of them are scared to take the fight. I think Jake is in a position where he has made the walk more times than KSI. I think he's fought I don't want to say stronger strength of schedule, but you go against Anderson Silva, right? You go with Demetriades, who was significantly undersized, but again, UFC veteran. Mike Perry, Tyron Woodley on two different occasions. So I think there's a strength of schedule edge with competition. So I don't think that Jake's scared. I think, again, both teams are in this stalemate, this gridlock of trying to make it make sense. And if the dollars don't make sense, then we're not going to see him fight. And unfortunately, for the last 5 years, that's the position they've been in. I don't know. I disagree with Leon. I don't think either people are scared.
Maybe it's not the fighters, and I don't believe Leon was talking about the fighters being scared, but it's more the teams because they understand the financial background behind this, and they understand that if their fighters lose, what the risk behind it is. I don't believe either Jake Paul or KSI is scared to take it. I don't think Nikita's scared. I don't think anyone's necessarily scared, but they understand they need to maximize the opportunity because once it happens, they may have a rematch, they may have a trilogy, but once it happens, it happens. There's no going back after that.
Yeah, which is a great point. I mean, the idea of those two fighting has kept this scene alive at points, you know what I mean? And has really pushed the wind into the sails of crossover combat, just the thought of KSI and Jake Paul. So I get it. Once it occurs, what would be next? But again, as I've stated so many times before, I'm exhausted of talking about this. I am so tired of talking about this. Either fight or please, for the love of God, stop creating news, stop creating headlines about this. Like it's just exhausting. It's tiring.
You're so exhausted about it, Ben. I thought I'd bring in KSI's coach himself to speak about the fight, to speak about KSI's actual fight that he's been getting in March. And I just want to shout out as well that he's a 5-0 in Misfits Boxing. He's got 2 current champs, Carla Jade and pro champ Idris Virgo. Let's bring him in, Coach Alexis. Today for Misfits News, we're joined with one of the people that was elected for Coach of the Year. So that really shows you the caliber of Shootfighters Gym. Alexis, how are we doing today, sir?
Yeah, very well. Good to be here.
It's been a long time coming. We've been really wanting you to come on. We've finally got you here. First things first, though, I want to talk about that Qatar card. Talk me through about your review and what you made of the full thing.
Yeah, first of all, congratulations to Qatar and Misfits for doing an outrageously good job. The card was fantastic. I think the location was amazing. Definitely be visiting there again. And the fights lived up to the hype. I thought there were some really, really good fights in there that lived up to the hype that they were going to be. I thought it was really good quality influence of the card and enjoyable to be part of.
You talk about some good fights there. For you, was there any standouts of the night? What really got your interest there?
Look, I like Jarvis's fight. I thought that the other kid, Ben, had more power and more boxing experience and more this and more that, but it was that kind of grit, that grit and that heart to stay in there and to kind of produce the goods that Jarvis did. I thought that he held himself really well. He kept his composure, and the other kid kind of spent all of his energy and just looked, after couldn't finish the job and looked for the way out. And I think that the ankle injury or whatever it was that pulled him out of the fight, I think it was to do with Jarvis's perseverance of staying in there and being diligent and controlled and keeping himself safe. I think that played a huge part in that fight.
Ben is asking for that rematch because he said he was done badly for that fight. Obviously, he says it's about the ankle. He said he would have won that fight, and justifiably so in his opinion. However, would you give the rematch? Do you think it's justifiable to do that?
Yeah, why not? Definitely. I think that's how you build characters. That's how you set a precedent, and that's how you set yourself apart. I think if you take a belt and you have a belt and there's a challenger there and there's any doubt in how it happened, I think you should rematch it. Definitely. I think it's always a good idea for a rematch if there's any doubt. And the injury for him puts doubt in it. And I mean, everyone ringside had kind of the same opinion as me, if I'm honest with you. But at the same time, I'm not adverse to. I like the kid. I like Ben. I like the kid. I think it's great. But I also think that being around boxing for as long as I have, I know when someone punches themselves out and then things don't go their way. A lot of people have carried on with broken hands and broken. So I mean, I've had fighters. I've had David Hay, tear his Achilles clean off the bone, and then fight 5 rounds on his back foot in the corner. I mean, that's an ankle injury.
Yeah,
that's surgical. A year out ankle injury that this guy just decided to fight on for 5 rounds. So it depends how much you really want it to how bad the injury is, if you know what I mean.
No, definitely. And I think that I actually was thrown back to that as well. When he rolled his ankle, I did think of that David Hay moment. So yeah, definitely on the same line as you. So I want to talk about another fight that a lot of people were excited about, and people are saying it's a return of one of the old Misfits greats, and that's Salt Pappy. He came back with a bang against King Kenny, who is a higher level opponent. A lot of people want to discredit King Kenny. However, he has got his wins back. He has got those credible wins as well. This fight didn't go his way. What was your assessment on it?
Yeah, being ringside, I actually thought he was in a fair bit of control of the fight. I thought his jab was working well. He was calm. I think he realized that every time you throw a backhand on Kenny, being an orthodox and a southpaw fighter, that slip counter is going to be on for Pappy. So, you should be cautious with how often you throw it, and you should make sure you do the correct setups and the correct feints to get the reactions that you want. And I think that he kind of got pushed into throwing those punches and got bullied into it a little bit by the crowd, maybe by his corner. They were getting excited. I think with Salt, you just got to take your time on him. I thought he was doing a good job. I thought the last part was rushed, and it was without saying it was Salt's fault. I think it's more Kenny's fault than Salt being great, being really good. Not that he isn't. He is good, and he had a really good counter. Props to him. I enjoy watching him fight. Just I thought that Kenny rushed the last part of it and got caught with a really, really good shot.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I would like to see Kenny return. Just needs a bit of time off and then assess what he needs to do next year. But there's a couple more fights I want to go over on that Qatar card. One, again, that stood out, maybe not for the right reasons, with Deji. And he's recently announced his retirement for the meantime. What did you make of Deji that fight week? And where does he go from here?
I think Deji's a talented boxer and a lovely guy. I think that it's very, very difficult for him to get motivated. I think that's the issue. And the issue is sometimes you want a warm-up fight, you want a nice opponent, but that won't motivate you. It won't get your appetite away. It won't get you in the gym. It won't get you running the extra miles. It won't get you up early in the morning. I think you need a challenge. I think that, I don't think he's going to retire from boxing. I definitely think he might need a break to find his kind of, his guide. He wants to find out, what he really wants to do in life. But, I think he enjoys boxing. And I think that if you put the correct challenge in front of him, I think he can rise to that occasion. I definitely think he can. But I think that he needs to be motivated, and the motivation is going to be fear-based.
Absolutely.
I think if you put a nightmare opponent in front of him, I think you're going to get the best Deji. I think if you don't motivate him, he's not going to push in.
For sure. And I look forward to see that Deji once again, because when he does set his heart to it, as you said, he's very talented. He's got all the ability in the world. So if he puts that hard work in, I'm sure we could have one of the best Misfits fighters on the roster. So I just want to talk about that main event, that being Anison Gibb and Slim, the fight everyone has been wanting for so many years, finally came into fruition. Sitting there ringside, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I called that fight the way it was going to go before it happened. I knew that was probably the way it was going to happen. I thought that Sim's just not strong enough kind of kid to deal with that kind of pressure. I thought Gibb does what he does, which is, lots of triggers, lots of feints, a lot of work outside the pocket, come back in with a big punch into a clinch, get rough, few shots to the back of the head. Maybe shouldn't have been allowed too many of them, I thought, perhaps. But otherwise, good pressure, good work rate. Landed some nice shots and just outworked him, just hustled him to bits, ran him over, really. And it was, in my opinion, it was 7 rounds to 1.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Gibb had a fantastic performance. It actually showed some high-level boxing IQ, in my opinion, as well. I think this is one of the best renditions we have seen of Gibb. I'm looking forward to see what he can bring.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think that he outworked Slim, but it was really weird. I mean, whether Slim talking about having a hand injury or not, generally speaking, it was really slow-paced fight with one-way traffic. I thought Gibb had his way with him, if I'm honest with you. I didn't think Slim really came out the block.
I think, especially seeing Slim not really find his range, his jab, popping it, that right hand. We didn't really see that right hand that he throws so often, even getting to scraps.
Like you said, for the taller guy, no range.
Yeah.
Yeah, strange.
I was surprised.
Yeah, me too.
And maybe possibly we could see that rematch down the line. However, we do need to break down something that went off during fight week. There were so many back and forths, and I think one of the highlights of the week, potentially one of the sales points, was that back and forth between Leon, your team, JJ. We actually had Leon on a couple episodes ago as well. Can you actually talk me through what is going on? Break it down for me, because I think the fans and myself, we need to understand what's really going on. Yeah,
I think there has got to be an honesty from everybody involved, not clout chasing, not making things up, but a real honesty. Gibb called up JJ to come do some sparring. I said, yeah, sure, roll up, no problem. JJ was there, Gibb was there. We made sure that they were both in the same gloves. Everyone's saying this ounce, that ounce. We'd never have a guy rolling in 12-ounce or 14-ounce gloves and the other guy in heavier gloves. Everyone would wear 16s or 18s. If they're heavyweights, sometimes they'd wear 20-ounce gloves. So you'd always try and keep it safe. They were in the same gloves. His coach, Leon, was with him. They did their own warm-up. They do what they do. We did ours. They got in the ring. JJ pieced him up and obliterated him for 2 rounds. It was as bad enough that I had seen enough. I don't want to make an environment unsafe. No one's getting anything out of it. The only thing Gibb would get is more of a headache, and JJ's not going to get any better by beating up a guy we know he can beat up. So I pulled him out. Sparring was over. His coach then said, do you have anybody else? We want to do some work. I said, there's a 61-kilo kid there. He can move you around. He was all right. It's not my place to give you more rounds. If you wanted to do more rounds, his coach asked me, and I was like, I can oblige. There's a guy there. If you want it, it's your choice. So all this talk of shark tanking, number one, it's a complete lie. Number two, it's unsafe for me to do that. And number three, I can't shark tank another guy. He's not my fighter. So I don't know if that's a bravado or a lie, or maybe just a bit of embarrassment from Gibb and some embarrassment from his coach. But I would never shark tank anybody. That's not my business. So anyone's more than welcome to come and have a chat with me about that, on camera, off camera, and see whether or not I'm telling the truth or not. I'm telling you 100% that's not how it went. He was free to do whatever he wanted to do, and his coach was the one that wanted to work. So it wasn't had nothing to do with me. He then sparred one more round or 2 more rounds. I forget. I think it was 1 more round or 2 more rounds, and then he wanted to do another round with JJ. I was like, it's not going to be any different to the first round. They thought maybe it was going to be. I was like, it's not, if you want to, sure, but I don't see a point in any of this. So I told JJ, go for it. JJ crunched him again. And I said, after that round, I was like, JJ, no more headshots, relax on him. There's no point you sparring him anymore. You're going to hurt him. So I stopped that spar, and they said, we want to do 1 more round. I think they did 5 rounds. Could be mistaken. It was a while ago. It was either 4 or 5. I think it was 5. But anyway, they want to do another round. So they did. I think they did 1 more final round with the other guy didn't hit Gibb, just moving him around. And they said, thank you so much for the work. His coach Leon then messaged JJ, there are levels, bro. You did amazing. You looked fantastic. One improvement. And everything was cool. And everything was calm. That's exactly how it went. I was there. So was his coach. And we could do this in public, or like we're doing, together, or we could do it now. But that's exactly how it went down. So I think there is an element of embarrassment and maybe clout chasing and maybe just hyping, however you want to put it. But one thing that I do find a little bit offensive is the fact that somebody could say that I was making an environment unsafe. That's something that I don't do. And I've been coaching for 30 years. And I've got, not from the influencer scene as well, just for everyone's sort of understanding. I coach professional fighters as well, and I've got loads of them. And we would never make that environment unsafe, ever. You know, we've got to make sure that they're taking punches. We won't continue that taking those shots. Most damage of fighters is done during sparring, not in fights. So you have to be really mindful of that. I've seen comas. I've seen people not wake up. I've seen people still hospitalized. I've seen broken orbital bones, broken skulls, face fractures. I don't want to be part of that if I can help it. So it's a rough sport we're in. So I think you need all the smart coaches, not guys with whistles, not guys shouting, but actual teachers and coaches that understand the sport and understand combat. They should be involved in it and they should be looking after kids. That's my opinion.
For sure. And I just want to sort of touch base on that, on your team and the whole environment you have in the gym. Talk to me. What is that environment about? How do you breed so many world champions as well? What do you put in behind the scenes?
Yeah, I mean, we've got over 120 world champions. Like, we've been doing this for 30 years. I mean, I've got guys fighting. We've, main evented UFCs, Pride, Strike Forces, Queensbury, Matchroom. You can, every show in the world that you can imagine, we've main evented because of the caliber of guys that we have. And I think it's a unique blend of what we've got going on in that gym. Really importantly, everyone works hard. Like, everyone works hard, and there can't be any bullshit. There can't be any lies. There can't be any falsities. Like, we can't go around saying, "Oh, that was a great shot," when it wasn't. The good thing about boxing and about combat is the truth is the truth. So, like, when two kids spar and one kid got the better of the other guy, I mean, fundamentally, if you were to ask Gib what happened in that spar, he'll tell you got beaten up. If you were to ask the coach will tell you got beaten up. You ask me, I'll tell you got beaten up, because that's what happened. So you can't lie about things, but what you can do is try and lie about the fabrications around things. Whereas when it comes to a gym like ours, the truth is the truth. So you're surrounded by really good quality fighters. You're surrounded by great strength and conditioning coaches, fantastic nutritionists, and you're just always going to get the best results because, when you've got that many good facets to the environment, you can't not breed champions,
Absolutely. And I don't want to sort of extend the topic too much or milk the topic too much, but when Leon came on, he did also mention, he said, look at the fighters they're giving JJ. They're talking about the spar. Does this show that they trust JJ as a fighter? What's your response to that?
Yeah, I mean, look, ultimately, I think Leon's potentially getting things incorrect. The incorrect thing is that he has no control over who anyone fights. Neither do I. We all have our opinions on what we want. I mean, look at me. I want Jake Paul. I want Tommy Fury. I want doesn't always get. The things that you want, it's sometimes what's important for business and what's important for Misfits, and then what's available. And we've had fights where guys, you've had Demetriades, they've pulled out, they've done it, and JJ's just turned up 4 or 5 times in a year, like literally like back-to-back fights. And, for time outside of the ring, coming back, everyone wants, big fights, and that's what we want. But at the same time, you're governed by a bunch of other aspects in a business that dictate your ability to pick fights. As far as I'm concerned, the fights that I want, I would want. I've named loads of fights that I would want. I would love those big fights. I'd love a Tommy Fury match. I'd love a Nate Diaz. I'd love a Jake Paul. I'd like you'd love a Mike Perry. You'd love all these fights. These fights are great. We'd love them all. Of course we would. I'd love an Amir Khan. There's loads of guys, Darren Till. There's loads of guys you want to say you'd love, but you've got to remember there's a business behind the wheel that produces, shows that want to build characters and build huge, enormous pay-per-view fights. And ultimately, I think our business is also governed by the fact that the boss, which is JJ, he wants to fight Jake Paul as well.
I want to sort of strip things back a little bit and look at JJ back in Logan Paul 2. He had a certain stylistic approach every time he went into the boxing ring. It was interesting, but it got him the wins. And then he decided to take you guys on as his coaches as Vidal Riley moved on to his professional career. And then he adopted this new technique, which a lot of people have criticisms, a lot of people have positive things to say. Can you talk me through how this all evolved and the development of JJ?
Yeah, I think the style you're talking about is what we use for Tommy.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah. So we used a little bit of a point style of boxing, just a little bit of a bounce to offset his jab. So I think that the reason why Tommy killed Jake Paul was all over him was because of that jab. That jab pieced him up and it kept him in range and offset Jake. Jake couldn't come in, couldn't throw his combinations, just couldn't get past the jab, and then Tommy would fire through after the jab. So a lot of traditional boxing coaches, not being rude, but with low-level experience, they don't realize that to get somebody like, as an example, JJ, to out-jab Tommy in a traditional way, if you're ignorant or arrogant, you would think you could do it. I'm neither of those. I know that I can't have JJ out jab him in a traditional sense of boxing. Tommy's been doing it for a very long time. He comes from a crazy family with great history. Arguably one of the best boxers on the planet with his brother. They're a fighting family. They've won national titles, world titles. They're very, very good at traditional boxing. So being the coach that I am, my job is, again, not ignorant and not arrogant. I won't fight in a strategic wrong position. So I felt that if we adapted a little bit of a style that was a bit more unorthodox, kept a different kind of line, I think it would be harder for Jake to time us. And we could potentially find some of our kill shots that we wanted on the right-hand crossovers when he came in. That was my plan, and it worked out really, really well. JJ didn't get hit with any jabs. And arguably, it was a very, very close fight. I thought we won it, and so did the majority of people that I speak to. But that being said, my main job was done.
Yeah.
JJ didn't get hurt. That's my main number one job. So all these other guys that aren't educated enough talk about, you should do this, you should do that. Maybe they should do that. Maybe they should go in front of Tommy Fury and put a double guard on and walk towards him and see what will happen to them. Because it's not as easy as you think. You have to strategize. You have to understand combat a little bit. And I think that without, it's just like saying, okay, when Gibbs fought Jake Paul, why did he get knocked out in a round? He fought it a traditional way. It was something that Jake was used to. I think when you fight certain guys, there are certain strategies you have. Like when you fight a southpaw, do you fight on the outside line? Do you step on the inside? You have to have strategies. Is this guy a counter puncher? What punch does he like? What does he favor? Where should I put my head? Should I put it to the right or should I put it to the left? Should I be dipping? Look at what the guy's really good at. Adjust your game to that. And I don't think a lot of people do that. I think a lot of the time now, the essence of teaching and coaching has gone. And it's just people shouting and talking. You know, you got to block, you got to move, you got to do. Yeah, what? What block? Where? What step? Why? And I think
why?
Questions, I genuinely think you get better quality fighters. And also, there's a safety element to it. Look, I'm trying to make JJ and all my fighters as safe as possible, but as horrifyingly terrifying and dangerous as well. We want knockouts. We want to win fights. But at the same time, you can't do that when you're lying face down.
For sure. And you can definitely see that with the fights JJ has had. And apart from the one, obviously, with Tommy Fury, that took that loss. The other ones, I mean, they were quick, easy performances. So there is nothing that can be taken away from that as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, when I saw him with Logan and stuff, the thing that really strikes me is, first of all, obviously, he wasn't in shape. He didn't have a clue of where he was going to put his head. There was lots of, he's such an easy guy to coach because, he's a raw, tough guy. And anyone can work with that. But, I think the most important thing is when you're dealing with fighters, it's great to get them in good shape.
Yeah.
So, having a fighter that instead of having extra fat and not so much muscle, that can be turned into a good cardio gas tank. That can be put into lean fighting muscle. That can be turned from slow twitch to fast twitch to get explosion. And then, with the right skills, you can put the right timing in, you can find the right shots. And I think that, hopefully you can see a big difference between JJ's thought process in his fight as the progression of him keeps on continuing. I mean, I know him from a gym point of view. If you look at what he's like in the gym now, he's lifting more than he's ever lifted in his life. He's faster than he's ever been. He's fitter than he's ever been. And he's sparring higher level guys than he's ever sparred before. So we've got to be doing something right for those things to be ticking those boxes. Yeah,
the progression is definitely going forwards. Now, let's talk about that as well. The last time we saw JJ was now over a year ago, I believe. And he's talking about this year being his biggest year to date when it comes to boxing and only big fights going forward. Can you talk me through what we can expect coming up?
Yeah, I mean, first quarter next year, we definitely want to be getting out. We've got a couple of opponents in mind that the team is talking about. We always, like I said, there's a big wheel of people that agree to these fights and that want these fights. Obviously, let's say I want this fight and DAZN are like, no, we don't like that fight. I can't push that fight anymore. If the TV execs don't want the fight, then you don't have the fight, right? You've got to make sure that it's the right fight for the audience, it's the right fight for the TV, it's the right fight for JJ. So we're all involved in these decisions and we're trying to get the biggest names possible. But a lot of people, you will be very, very surprised. Lots of people talk about fighting JJ and then suddenly something happens and they don't turn up and they don't, and there's been a mix up and I've got to go to the police station or no, I've got illness or I broke my hand, I've got an injury or I want an extra 10 million. Most guys try to up the price. And what they're doing is they're pricing themselves out of the fight. It means that they don't really want it. That's what that really means.
Absolutely. Now, a name that Ben Davis keeps throwing about, and I know if he was able to make it right now, he'd be saying the name, is Luke Rockhold. I mean, we've seen him also in bare knuckle. He has a great career beforehand as well. Do you believe this could potentially be a good matchup going forwards next year?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Luke fought 185 before, but he's been fighting at 205 now. He's
Yeah.
pretty heavy. I don't think he's a big enough name in the influencer scene or boxing scene for people to. I think Mike Perry's probably a bigger name, and Mike Perry did beat him.
Yeah.
Considering Mike Perry stopped him in bare knuckle FC, right?
Yes. Yeah, that is right.
Yeah, so
Luke's teeth were actually knocked out, I remember.
Yeah, so you got some validity, you got some argument to say that Perry's a bigger name, but obviously Perry lost to Jake. But then again, the element is a lot of people like the comparison of how does JJ do against that guy and how did Jake do against. That's why they like the Tommy Fury fight, because a lot of people said, "Oh, JJ did way better than Tommy," so way better than Jake. So there is a comparison factor that's not a bad idea sometimes. A lot of the time, if you can't get the you can't get a bride, you get the bridesmaid. You can't get Jake at the moment; he doesn't want to fight. So then maybe Mike Perry might be the next best thing. It'll be a big fight. He's got a really big fan base. So there's an element there. There's an option there for sure. But I think Rockhold, I'm not sure if he was more relevant, if he was still in the UFC, still active and still held a belt like he did, before he lost it to Bisping, I think he'd have been massively relevant for sure.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about that Jake Paul fight. We've mentioned it a few times. There is so much back and forth. We hear 200 pounds and we hear 192 pounds, 187.5 pounds. I mean, I know how frustrated Ben gets when he's here talking about it. I even know the fans get frustrated every time I bring it up. So let's talk, you and I. How do we make this happen? How do we make this happen in our lifetime, or my lifetime at least?
I don't think it's that complicated. Did they both fight Tommy at 185?
Yes.
In fact, we fought him at 183. We were lighter. Why don't we have the fight where we both fought Tommy out? Does Jake Paul want to fight Conor McGregor at 185 in a UFC? Yeah. Does he want to rematch Tommy at one? Yeah. Does he want? He's happy to do all these fights at 185 with other people, but he's not happy to do it with that fight at JJ. Considering we're not even 185, we would move up to 185. We fight at 170. We're going up 15 pounds, right? Considering that, we'll do it. But what I'm saying is, it's interesting that when it comes to everybody else, a Nate Diaz MMA fight, a Conor McGregor fight, a Tommy rematch, he would go to 185. But for some reason, he won't go to 185 for KSI. And I think the reason is, if he went to that weight and lost to JJ, he goes nowhere. The money stops. There's no more fighting OAPs at 60 years old. There's no more going to the wealth, other MMA fighters or weight bullying people. It all stops. So I think they want a money grab. And if they do want the JJ fight, the KSI fight, sorry, they want to make sure the weight is at such an inflated weight that they have that advantage of when they do get hit, because they know they'll get hit, is that they'll be able to take the shot and hold the shot a little bit better. Yeah. So I think that's where we are with it. If I was to say, I got forwarded a podcast that Jake did with Logan saying, why don't we flip a coin? Why don't we flip a coin then? Why don't we flip a coin and say, we want 185 and you want 187 or 190? Why don't we do 183, 193, 182, 192? Why don't you flick a coin both ways? Pick a weight that everyone's happy with, where if you make a mistake, you got to go down. If we make a mistake, we got to go up. Flip a coin, and winner takes all.
Make an event out of it. We can make a whole fight week out of that. We can really rinse that.
I think realistically speaking, if they're not going to agree on a weight, I mean, we've come up to 185. If they're not going to agree on that, I don't know what. Then okay, maybe a coin toss is the only way to do it. But then if we do a coin toss, like I said before, why don't we do a winner takes all? So that fight's worth about $100 million. Why don't you put the winner takes all? Nobody gets paid, not a dime. The winner takes everything. I think you should put everything on the line. I think that's a great way to run that fight. And I think that I know that JJ's KSI is happy to do that, because he has full faith in his ability to do that, and we have faith in his ability. So none of us are going to take a paycheck. So we've got to put our money where our mouth is. I'll be interested to see who on Jake's team does that.
Absolutely. I think that would be a fun way to do it. And if there was any way to make this super fight happen, maybe it's in a coin flip. But there's a couple more fights I want to talk about before we end the interview. One of them being way of Conor McGregor. You mentioned the name a couple times there, so it came back to my mind. I was with Conor for the BKFC in Marbella of Spain. And he actually called out JJ. He said, I'll fight him for that song alone. I've brought it up a few times. I don't know if you saw the clip and what your reaction was it to that call out. That's the second time he's called it out now, I think.
Yeah, I know Conor. I know his coach really well. I coach his coach. I know them all really well. They're all really, really good guys. Conor's massively talented, a massively talented fighter, great, great sports entertainer, and I think that fight would be exceptional. I think it'd be a great fight, and I think that, you know, for as much as Conor's got all talk, he doesn't cut corners in his preparation. He'd joke around, say, "I'll do this, I'll do that." That guy trains hard. And at 145 pounds, you know, when he used to fight in the UFC at 145, I don't have anyone beating him at that weight. I think he's exceptional. So I think that'd be a great fight.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to that Tommy Fury fight. We've mentioned it a few times. Now, he recently just dropped out of his fight against Darren Till that was due in January. What's your reaction to that? What's going on? I have no idea. He's calling out Jake. Then Logan Paul's now fighting Tommy's dad. I mean, I'm lost now.
Yeah, I think that you know, when we fought Tommy, we like to keep things really professional, and our mind's on the job. You know, I couldn't care less about his father. I couldn't care less about him. It's not me who's fighting. I don't care about any of it. I just want to get the job done. I won't accept certain things. I won't tolerate certain things, just like any man. But no one crossed the line. Everyone was cool. A little bit of banter, shouting, whatever. Nothing major. I don't think they like the idea that Darren Till said that he could do whatever he wanted with them. And the idea is, when you're an MMA fighter, you say to a boxer, you know what? If I want to take you in that room and we shut the door, I'm going to be the one that walks out every single day of the week. And I think that demasculates you a little bit. That shows a bit more of an alpha. I think that he got alphaed up a little bit, and so did his dad. He got shouted at a little bit, and Till was just like, I'll kick you in the head. He just bantered him, as he would. It was quite funny. And I don't think they knew what to do with it. And I think that it just showed that when it doesn't go their way, they want to throw their toys out of the pram. And I think that's just really unprofessional and kind of silly because, I mean, you had John Fury headbutting people. You've had him punching glass and screaming, "I'm going to murder," and throwing bottles. And it's all okay, you know, and funny when he does it. The second someone says, "I'm going to kick you in the face,"
that's crossing the line. That's when we cross the line.
Yeah, you cross the line. I can't believe you're going to break the rules, bro. All you do is break the rules, and because you're an old guy, we allow it, and because you're a Fury, we allow it. But realistically speaking, Darren did nothing wrong. He was bantering, he was selling the fight, and I thought he was hilarious. And it's a shame that Tommy's pulled out because I thought that was going to be a good fight.
I was looking forward to it, especially at that higher weight category as well. I think Darren Till could have caused more issues than people actually expected.
Yeah, I mean, I've known Darren. I've had guys go up and spar Darren before for MMA. You know, when he was in his MMA career, people forget he's 18-5 in the UFC. But he's a talented MMA fighter as well. It's not like he's not a good fighter. So I definitely would think it would be a fight. I'm not sure about the weight though, because both of them cut to make a good weight. I think they're both being lazy at that weight. I think they both could cut weight if they wanted to. And I think, if I'm honest with you, they would both perform better at the lighter weight by having less body weight, being more explosive and faster. I think the weight cut would help Darren and would help Tommy. I don't think holding that weight when you're not naturally that weight. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Like someone like Jake Paul, he cuts from 240 down to 200.
200, yeah.
So that's a 40-pound cut. You know, you saw what he was like against Mike Tyson. He was very labored. He was all tired, and there were 2-minute rounds. That weight didn't do him any favors, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I think I actually saw on his podcast anyway, he said he's not fighting at that weight again. He's never doing that again. It was too much. It was too heavy.
Yeah, I mean, you could, yeah. I mean, that fight, that exhibition or whatever it was should just never have happened. I really want to try and erase it from my memory, if I'm honest with you.
Just forget that one even happened. And
yeah,
now,
I really do.
Let's talk about potentially the highlight of next year. JJ gets his rematch with Tommy Fury. How does that go? Talk me through. If they were to fight now, having had experience that first one, what happens this time around?
Yeah, if I'm honest with you, the first time round, I was like, JJ, you've got to be super careful with this guy. You've got to keep this on. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. And, you know, you kind of got to give, an undefeated Fury and, a lifelong boxer that respect of if you get in that position, they're going be better than you, and they're going to be able to do this and do that. And do the truth be told, it wasn't really that dangerous for JJ. He got hit, I think, with one punch in 6 rounds, literally. It just wasn't that dangerous for him. I think the rematch would be very, very, very different. And I think Tommy would be the one that Tommy was trying to smother work and try and control the distance because he didn't have a jab. I think you'd see a different type of JJ, a different type of jab from us, and just a lot more violent from JJ. I think you've also got to understand, a lot of people say, you told him to clinch, and of course, well, listen, when you're in a combative situation, there's 2 ways to go. You back out and you get hit really, really bad, or you stay nice and close and you kill the shot and you let the referee do his job. And if the guy's punching you in the back of the head, he's going to get warned. Tommy already got a point off as well. So, you have to let the referee be able to do his job of deducting points if the guy's being irresponsible. So that being said, I think that we can play with those distances and get much better power shots off. And also, and once JJ's kind of felt that power and felt that speed, I think the timing's on our side now. I mean, I wouldn't have thought Tommy looks like he's been getting better every day of his life.
For sure.
I mean?
And I think that's something I discussed as well with one of our other guests as well, is that Tommy's improvement in the last 5 years has been very minimalistic. But when you look at JJ, even if you look at Jake Paul as well, the improvements have been far bigger than what we've seen from Tommy's end. So if either fighter was to rematch Tommy, I do think Tommy would go against a better version of both of those fighters.
I agree with you 100%.
So let's finish off the episode and sign out. I'm going to give you the platform to give any final words, any exclusive for the people and the fans watching at home. So excited to finally have you on Misfits News.
I just want to say that all of us, JJ included, really appreciate the support. Whether it's positive or negative, the idea that you guys are tuning in and you're giving your opinion, it does matter. It doesn't go unnoticed. The one thing that I love, I'm a huge boxing fan, and I spent my life in combat with no other jobs. And it's so good that everyone's getting involved in this. People that haven't been boxing their whole lives or haven't been fight fans, and now because their favorite YouTuber or singer or whatever or influencer or OnlyFans girl or ring girl or whoever, their favorite whatever, has started boxing and they've become a fan of boxing. And that for me is fantastic, because boxing is a place where a lot of life is learned in a boxing gym, not just a boxing ring, but a boxing gym. You get camaraderie, you get discipline, you get confidence, you get ingenuity, you get team spirit, you get loyalty. There's so much that comes out of boxing that I'm such a fan of, that it makes men and women better. And one thing this world needs is more better men and women. And I think that boxing and combat is a place for this to happen. I think that tuning in and watching your favorite guys and girls fight is you being part of boxing. If you get a chance, go to a boxing gym, a reputable one, my one if you want, anyone, and come down and honestly have some fun, get fit, make some friends, enjoy being in that social environment, get off your mobile phone, do something active. It's something that I think you'll really benefit from. And again, just a big thank you from our team, and I'll speak for JJ as well, just from a fan point of view. Just thank you for being there and being concerned and being enthused by the fights.
Wise word from Alexis. I appreciate you as always. Shootfighters Gym, big shout out to them. Big shout out to you for coming on. I really appreciate all your time.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's great to have Coach Alexis in. It looks like JJ's really taking this next year seriously. And one of the names that was thrown about that stuck out to me was Mike Perry. It looks like a fight that they may be taking early next year.
It's a big fight, right? Mike Perry would be a big fight, and I get the intention behind it. We want to beat that guy more impressively than Jake Paul beat him. But the problem with that is, in order to beat Platinum Mike Perry better than Jake Paul did, you're going to have to stop him with like the first punch you throw. Because what Jake Paul did was quite impressive. And, I think it's stylistically something that Jake hadn't seen up until that point. And KSI wouldn't have seen up until he gets in there. So I do think there's value in it. But it's a difficult fight. That's a hard one. Again, not the one I would have wanted. You know me, and I've maintained this. The fight that JJ should take is Luke Rockhold. I will not hear any other thought or opinion.
I think the only way Mike Perry wins against JJ as well is if you're in his corner. Now you work for him. You get in that corner, Ben. You teach him the basics, and he's going out there and absolutely blitzing KSI.
I think if I cornered my current boss over at Dirty Boxing, the chief violence officer, Platinum Mike Perry, if I cornered Mike against KSI, I'd be fired that night. I don't think that they would have me back on Misfits by corner against the owner. What a week of news. Finally, we get to break some exclusive updates, which is fantastic. I hope the crossover fans enjoyed that. I've been your host, as always, Ben the Bane Davis. Make sure you go get that merchandise for my co-host, Biel, so that he can get some good Christmas presents. And we'll see you guys in the next one.